Muted. All right, there we go.
There we go.
Here we are. Here we are.
Well, welcome everybody. We'll give it a little bit before we officially get rolling, but want to thank everybody for joining so far. Got Garrett and myself, Adam Hallbleib here from Beach Bum Exotics. Got Joel over there.
How you guys doing? We got another Wednesday extravaganza for us, so that's pretty fun. And then we're lucky enough to get to rant and talk with Garrett from Reach Out. If you want to say hi to everybody.
Doing? What's up, everybody? How you guys doing? Good to see you. Good to be back on YouTube again.
Yeah, it's kind of been a while. Yeah, I was looking at that. Been a little bit.
It has been a little bit for you. I've been getting busy over there, I'm sure, man. You got
too busy. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I'm glad you guys invited me on. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks again.
Yeah. I can imagine you're pretty busy with all the new hatchlings coming out and everything like that.
It is, yeah. It's hatchling season. I'm swimming in them over here at the moment. So, and then when you get the hatchlings with it, with this kind of stuff, it's like usually it's stuff that everybody's been waiting for. So I get 10 times the number of like, are they here yet? Are they here yet? Are they here yet?
Right. You know what I mean? Answering everybody all day. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's not with my 4 children, it's with all the other Super Dwarf children that I have in the market. So yeah. But
that makes sense.
That's what Spartan Reptiles, he hit me up and he goes, "Oh, live streams tonight. I better hit up Garrett and get on his waiting list before this live stream happens."
I actually had a couple of phone calls today with people sending me, they're sending name, email, phone number, whatever else you need to get on the waiting list. This is what I want. I heard you going on the cast. So apparently people have some high hopes for your guys' show here. I think all of a sudden everybody wants Super Dwarfs and they hear it from you guys. So
right. Yeah, we'd like to take complete credit for all of that, actually. That has nothing to do with all the work you put in.
Well done, everybody. Well done. Hats off.
Patting myself on the back on that one.
Good job. Yeah, absolutely.
Here we go. We got the crowd rolling in now. Awesome, man. I see Morph Mixology. Thank you. Austin, Ball and Chain out there. Compton Ball. Saw you guys. Thank you, everybody.
Jason, I need you back over here. I'm building again. So grab your tape measure and head on over.
Yeah, I saw he was over there a little bit ago. That was pretty fun.
That was a good vlog.
Yeah, it was a good time. Yeah, he came out just to come play. What's up, Eric? So
yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's do the official kickoff here. So, Garrett, appreciate you joining, and we wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to everybody. I can't believe there would be somebody that doesn't know who you are, but the off chance of that is. But yeah, take it away. Let us know who you are, and we always kind of follow format. Started out with kind of how you got started and a little history about yourself too. So,
okay, yeah. I think probably like a lot of people in the industry, I don't know that I necessarily chose Reptiles. I think they more chose me. I don't know if that's the same for you guys or not.
Absolutely.
But so the earliest reptile story my mom talks about, I think I was about 2 years old, and I caught a water snake down in the creek, and I was holding it midsection. It was turning around and biting me on the hand, and she said I was saying, "Look, Mom, ow! Isn't it pretty? Ow! Can I keep that? Ow!" So I have liked all animals, but my mom was allergic to anything with fur and feathers, so it was all scales for me. So I got into fish and reptiles and stuff. Always wanted a snake, wasn't allowed to have one because she was afraid of them. And that didn't end well because it just made me want them all the more. And I did finally get my first snake when I was 15, which was a carpet python. And then months later, I got my first, it was actually a pure Jampea locality dwarf retic. And it's been downhill from this. That was about 20 years ago that I got my first dwarf retic. And I've been working with them pretty much nonstop ever since, with the exception of some traveling and stuff like that. So, but other than that, I've basically been keeping, breeding, playing with whatever dwarf and super dwarf retics for about 20 years now. So, which they really, I remember when I got that little Jamp, it was kind of like the new thing. So I know it's kind of like the new thing now, but they've actually been around for a while. It's taken a while to sort of perfect the morphs and stuff down into the smaller sizes that people can really enjoy. So I think they're now hitting a second wind with the availability of actually small dwarf and super dwarf retics because of the 20 years plus of selective breeding that we have into them. So yeah, that's basically it. I mean, I've worked a bunch of different jobs. A lot of people probably know that I did work at Prehistoric Pets for 3 years. That was good times. I was a sales manager there. I've always had kind of a sales and marketing background. And I was working for a company that sold testing services here in Pittsburgh. So we do ultrasound and stuff like that on checking steel integrity. Like the Liberty Bridge was burning down over here, and everybody was freaking out, and our company went in and tested that and everything, make sure that that was okay. So that was the kind of stuff that I was doing, and it was great. I liked the company that I worked for. I enjoyed the job, but was actually my wife kind of said, like, you've got all these super dwarves down in the basement, why don't you, she's like, you've always made money for other people, why don't you try making money for yourself? So I kind of retired to working my butt off for the last few years. So kind of officially retired versus went full-time with Reptiles, whatever you want to call it, a few years ago. So I've just been hanging out in the basement over here, breeding the reptiles ever since. And all I do is dwarf and super dwarf retics. I mean, that's, people love to ask me for all kinds of weird fringe stuff. I literally have one snake that is not a dwarf or super dwarf retic, and it's kind of a leftover scrub python that I have just hanging out. So lone male.
Lone male, huh?
I got you.
Yeah, just from the previous days. So that's it. And everything else is dwarf and super dwarf retics. So that's all it is. And it's really been fun to be able to specialize in that, because I can totally pour my focus into the one thing and try to really, really do it well,
Right.
rather than spreading out over a bunch of things and just kind of just being one of the people that does a little bit of everything. I can, try to be a big fish in a small pond, so to speak, with the super dwarves, and just pick them only, hammer that niche, and it's been good to me. So it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Specializing.
So I keyed in on a couple things there. So I grew up with, I love my grandma very dearly. She's from the Midwest, and when we used to play Scrabble, she always used to spell the word crick.
Yeah, I heard that too. I get that.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh accent coming out. I get to talk like that now. I used to always get made fun of when I was in California, but you're taking me back to that. Thanks, Adam.
No, not at all. And you could thank Heather for that one. She hit me up on Hangouts and said, you gotta
you gotta call him out on that.
No.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
joking there. But so Garrett, with the whole retic thing, did your first experience with them, were you introduced at Prehistoric Pets, or did you have experiences before that?
Oh no, I had them years before. So I worked at Prehistoric Pets. Let's see, I quit there probably 6 years ago. So it was from like 9 to 6 years ago. But it's been 20 years that I've been working with dwarf and super dwarf retics.
Gotcha.
I love reticulated pythons. I have had and have bred the big guys before, so I know what a monumental effort that is to really do it well. And it was a blast over there at Prehistoric Pets, but it was actually kind of the opposite. Prehistoric had some, a few like old Kalatoa females hanging around. I was always like, take them out, dust them off. How about these guys? Let's breed these. They're like, nobody wants small retics. You know what I mean? Like, nah, we don't want to do that. And, that's fine. Everybody's got their thing. Jay loves his giant snakes. And, he has projects that have some dwarf and super dwarf in them, but it's usually a byproduct of what he does, which anybody that's ever, followed Jay over at Prehistoric knows that he's like the man for coming up with new morphs and cramming all kinds of genetics and getting snakes that look like Skittles,
Yeah.
and that's amazing. But he's never been really like a size guy as far as that goes, And so, no, he never did do that. When I did work there, we definitely had a little bit more of a push and a bent towards the dwarf and super dwarf, just because they were like my pet projects while I was there. I really had a lot of fun working there, getting to know a lot of breeders just through the networking potential that they had there. A lot of what I was actually doing was like trading. I might take a, $10,000 or $15,000 mainland and trade it for a whole clutch of super dwarf stuff, which, at the time, about, this would have been maybe 7 years ago or something like that, I was getting pure Kalatoas for about $300 a piece. And I was just eating them up. I loved it. I grabbed as many as I could, cycled through them, always tried to keep them and stuff. But, those guys never really wanted it to happen. They had other priorities,
Yeah.
But what was really neat about that really springboarded, if it wasn't for that, I can honestly say I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today. Not only because of the education that I received about sort of the commercial production side, rather going from like a hobbyist that has like tanks everywhere, and stuff as a kid, to really being able to like reliably understand the reproductive cycle of reticulated pythons predictably. So I learned a lot about that. But actually, the biggest thing that shot me forward for the dwarf and super dwarf thing was just knowing everybody that I had sold all those animals to, that maybe didn't necessarily, they weren't even bred at Prehistoric Pets, but they came through my hands. Like we traded, we got a whole clutch in, I dispersed them out to other people, sold those guys on stuff,
Right.
other super dwarf enthusiasts that kind of like were following after my true passion with those.
Right.
And so it was really cool to sort of keep tabs with all those guys, a lot of relationships made through those situations. And, anybody that's been into super dwarfs for a while will know the name Travis Kubis. He's probably produced more Kalatoas anyway than anybody else in the United States, as well as a bunch of different crosses and high percentage stuff for many years. And because of the relationships that I formed with him while I was at Prehistoric Pets, he actually reached out to me a few years ago and was getting out of it for personal reasons. And I was able to pick up a lot of his collection, which, he always had stuff that I really looked up to his
Yeah.
collection. I loved his animals. I loved his bloodlines. Always was a follower of that kind of stuff. So it was really a great opportunity for me to get that collection and sort of integrate it to everything that I had going on. So that was really cool. So thank you, Travis. If you ever watch
Yeah.
this at some point, that was huge for me.
Yeah.
Big deal.
That's really cool,
So,
man. Yeah.
Yeah, that is super
yeah.
cool. Yeah. All
But
right.
yeah, so it was like right in the middle, in the early days, I was kind of keeping his pets and stuff like that. And I don't think I'm trying to remember if I bred any retics before then. I might have bred a clutch of like old wild caught stuff back in the day, but it was mostly keeping and collecting. And you're talking about the 90s, you know what I mean? That's that was,
Yeah.
there wasn't as much of an emphasis on the breeding aspect of it. Everyone had like one of everything,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was more my introduction to keeping. And then when I got into prehistoric and was really introduced, I was breeding other reptiles, but not so much the reticulated pythons. And so hitting it, that was just at the right time for me to kind of give me a glimpse for 3 years at that world, see what that was all about. And then really, like, after oohing and awing over all the mainland stuff, just watching my attention go back home to, for me, home with the dwarf and super dwarf retics was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I bet your experiences over at Prehistoric, man, just kind of put you light years ahead, right? That was
Well, you pack this much experience into this much time.
yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can honestly say, like, we were talking about shipping snakes,
Yeah.
People ask, like, where do you come up with your ideas for shipping snakes or whatever? I can honestly say I've shipped thousands. I would be shocked if it wasn't more than tens of thousands of baby
Right, of
retics.
animals.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just there, I've shipped now probably thousands myself, but tens of thousands while I was there, all over the world. You know, shipping giant snakes with little snakes. You know, hundreds of snakes in one shipment. Shipping them that, you know, during like long transits to faraway countries, dealing with all the permits and stuff. You know, watching the things that hatch, how that stuff actually happens. You know, it's one thing if you're at home and you're breeding stuff and you get a few clutches a year, you sort of formulate your theories on how to improve and be better over that. But when you're hatching clutches every single day, that stuff just comes so much faster.
Oh,
You
it has
know, I
to.
mean,
It has to.
yeah, I mean, that's a huge company with 30 some odd employees that is all based on snake breeding, really.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, you know, that's a lot of snake breeding. It's you know, it's like managing 30 hobby collections at once, you
Right.
know, is
Right.
really
That's
kind of what
crazy.
it's like. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And so then, you know, you said you were already kind of keeping super dwarfs. Jay primarily deals with mainland or just kind of the morph aspect, doesn't really care about size. At what point, I guess, was it that, you know, you were just kind of like, all right, super dwarfs are it, and I'm going to bring everything into this market? Was it while you were working at Prehistoric, or was it kind of after?
Yeah, well, the last nail went into the coffin while I worked there, and I actually remember exactly what it was. It was the anaerothristic gene that did it. So they had just really two Superdorf projects at the time that they were working through. This would have been circa like 2008, 2009, which was the Snow Project, the albino anaerothristic,
Right.
and they had a platinum anaerothristic. And it was actually Tim O'Reilly that named that gene. He kind of classified it. There was something. There was always a lot of silvery snakes that would tend to pop up in those island localities,
Right.
and people thought it was just a trait of the island localities themselves. Some of them are very silvery, you know. But he
Right.
actually bred it out, produced hets, you know, bred them together with predictable results. Defined what it was doing. You know, a lot of people thought it was a black and silver snake. He's saying no, it's anaerothristic. It's removing all red pigment from a snake that, you know, retic really doesn't have red. It's mostly a brown snake. So
Right.
when you pull the red out, what you're left with is almost the closest thing I've seen to them, because they're not really like, say, an anaerothristic corn snake or something. The closest thing I've seen of them are like translucent bearded dragons.
Bearded
Where
dragons.
you can kind of see through the skin a little bit. It's almost like the light's bouncing off the back of the skin. It's a really wild thing. But I remember jumping on with all the other breeders at the time and arguing with them that anaerothristic was in fact a genetic trait. And at the time, everyone's like, you marketing retards over there
Yeah.
calling everything's a new morph just so you could sell it for more money. Those silvery things have been around forever.
Right.
But no, I mean, the ability to actually reproduce it. And it's funny, a lot of the dwarf and super dwarfs are very silvery as adults, but it doesn't mean that they're anaerothristic. And when you start breeding for that, you prove out pretty quickly that it's actually a fairly rare trait. You know, I mean, it's around in those localities, but you would think everything was anaerothristic, and it's just not. There's quite out of all the Calatoas and everything that I have, I don't have any proven anery Calatoas at all. So
Right.
actually, Adam got a snake from the first clutch of Super Dwarfs that I think are now a new line of anery that finally is a pure Super Dwarf visual anery, which is where it's at for selective breeding new morphs with the anery, because in one generation you both hit the 50% Super Dwarf mark and 100% head anery, no matter what you breed it to.
Right.
So that's a really,
Yeah.
people don't realize what an epic animal that is. So I'm really hoping that those do prove out. I mean, they've proven breeding to each other, but I want to prove it out by breeding it into known anaerothristic line, make sure it's compatible.
Compatible.
Right.
So that's the next step.
Different.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Definitely, man. She's coloring up so nice too. Just like every shed. Just what's
So
that?
you know what I'm talking about with the color. It's not really a black and silver snake. It's more
Oh,
like greens,
e-
blues.
and that can change depending like how the light's hitting it and what mood she's in, kind of too, right? Like, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely
I
not
always say
silver.
it's almost like looking through tinted glass, as though you were looking at a retic through
Yeah,
tinted glass or something. It's a weird. If you, people haven't seen them, in pictures, it's really hard to capture exactly what it is that's going on. Nobody
yeah,
ever understands why that's one of my favorite mutations. But but having to battle with everyone and knowing that I was right, that it is a genetic, recessive genetic mutation, like Tim said, was really what kind of sealed the deal for me. I wanted to see Annery and Super Dwarf and everything at that point. And
yeah.
so, when I first moved away from prehistoric, I just kept two retics and they were actually mainlands. But they were just like old snakes that I'd had for a long time when I moved out here. Um, and then I just, missed my super dwarfs. I was trying not to have reptiles, to be honest, and it just didn't work. So like within 6 months, I think I had like another 40 snakes or whatever, and most of them were like adults that I had already previously owned. I just went and got back, and it was a landslide. But I had a lot of other stuff too. Because I honestly like everything. I mean I like everything. So I
Yeah.
had all kinds of just fringe weird stuff that I wanted to work with. Dan Malaria is like my guy to go to. Like, hey man, I need something different. I just hit me with something new.
Right, right. You
Get
got to
my
get your
fix.
fix, man.
Right. So I go to Dan and get my weird animal fix, and then realize, why am I doing this? This isn't the super dwarf, and
Yeah.
so after learning that lesson enough times, I was like, you know what, forget it. I'm just gonna do what I do well, and stick with those, and just do
And knock
that.
it out of the
So
park.
Yeah,
try,
man.
hopefully, yeah, hopefully,
Yeah.
knocking
Ain't
it out
nothing
of the
wrong.
park when you're a snake breeder always seems like maybe next generation. It's like no matter how far you get, you're like, this is an awesome new morph. I wonder what it would look like in albino. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's like, it's never done, is it? It's like the
It's
second,
never
the thought
done.
right after, oh, that's what it looks like. I finally made one. The very next, like, second half of that sentence is, now I have to do this with it. So
Right, right.
Exactly.
it never
Absolutely.
ends. And for me,
Absolutely.
the answer is always higher percentage super dwarf. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of an interesting thing too, is how you're talking about, we were discussing a little earlier that the morphs isn't necessarily the driving factor in the super dwarf projects. It's almost like the lineage is similar to, like we had talked about, like dog breeding and stuff like that. You're going after the lineage for the smaller and smaller snake, not necessarily a purple albino or something like that.
Yeah. So the funny thing about super dwarfs, they take on a whole new, that specific niche takes on a whole new life unto itself, different from anything else that the reptile industry is used to. And I think the reason why is because you're breeding for so many more traits than you are with any other project. So like ball pythons, for example, I mean, they are what they are. They come out of the wild. They are a ball python. You're
Right.
basically just, they have these traits. Ball pythons tend to be this and this, and there's differences in personality, but they fall within a certain bracket. With super dwarfs, when you get a wild caught retic of any locality, they want to kill you and eat you. You know what I mean? For the
Right.
most part. I mean, not always, but I mean that's the reputation that they had. And super dwarves are no different. They don't realize they're small. They're like Big Man on their campus, and so they want to kill you and eat you. And so they get a bad reputation for a long time because of that. Because people kept importing them, nobody would breed them, and so they're always, oh, they're this, oh, they're that. And so, the first thing we had to do is breed for temperament, to where we have these great, and a lot of times that really just takes one or two generations of captive breeding,
Right.
because I don't think it's that they're captive bred that automatically makes them awesome. I mean, there's definitely nature versus nurture, and they're getting nurtured as captive breds. But I think what happens over time is that the animals that make the best captives get treated the best, probably lay the most eggs. Breeders tend to hang on to those ones. And so
Right.
their genetics get passed on. So you're breeding for temperament. Obviously, with super dwarfs, you're breeding for size. the size of a snake and trying to, make that specific. And then you're adding all your morphs and everything onto that. And then for each of us, like Adam, you have, a Madu cross girl from me, with my Madu lines. I'm trying to breed for a very specific look. I like wide open back pattern, and a really creamy type of a coloration. With my Kalatoas, I like a dark gravelly gray and dorsal striping, With the Kiowatis, I'm breeding for reds, brick reds. So within each locality, you have that too. And when you bring all of this together, it's like you said, Joel, it's more like dogs, where you have dogs are all one species, but they are hundreds of different breeds
Oh my
that
God,
are
so many.
night and day from one
So
another.
many,
yeah. Right. And if you stick within certain genetic bloodlines, you get predictable outcome. If you go to a good breeder and you're getting, doesn't matter what breed it is, they're going to try to be producing good, strong, healthy dogs. I mean, there's a lot of like freak show kind of breeds and stuff,
Right.
but outside of that stuff, I mean, if you find someone that's really passionate about furthering the breed, they're trying to stick to a type and a form within a specific bloodline, and you're going to get really predictable results within that stuff. If you go get a dog from the pound that looks like whatever breed you're trying to get, you really don't know what you're going to get. And that's what we see in the Super Dwarf world as well. If you're buying from somebody that maybe is like, well, Super Dwarfs are hot right now, maybe I should get some of those, throw some stuff together, call it Super Dwarf, but they're actually specializing in breeding some other species, or or even just mainland retics. Like maybe I'll add some Super Dwarf projects. It's a little bit different than somebody who's really trying to further the breed. You know what I mean? That's passionate about creating the perfect animal for us in captivity. So yeah, it's a very three-dimensional thing. The biggest problem for me as a breeder and a seller that comes with that is that people don't know how to buy them. I mean,
Right.
every
Okay.
day I literally get, like, not exaggerating or whatever, but at least over 100 emails every day. What's your availability list on dwarf and super dwarf retics? And I just don't have one. I don't have one. So it's like, they're thinking they're going to go buy like ball pythons, where I can go on Morph Market any day of the week, click whatever morphs I want, and most likely it's there.
Yeah, you're
And I
gonna find it.
probably have it from several different breeders, unless it's something really cutting edge and new. There, if I'm looking for a leopard bumblebee, I can find 37 of them and price shop them and look at which breeders I like, and buy from whoever I like the best, or whichever animal happens to look the best or cheapest, or whatever my parameters are. With the
Right.
super dwarfs, it isn't like that. It's more like, I mean, now think about if you're shopping for the next champion dog. You know what I mean? You've got Rex and you've got Fido, and you really want a puppy out of that specific breeding because the head type of this and the body type of that. You don't just, go on dogs.com and click and buy the breed and get what you want. With the super dwarfs, as rare as they are still, I know there's a lot of talk about them, but go count the numbers of them that you can get. You know what I mean? It's really not difficult. I mean, it's really actually pretty difficult, especially finding good stuff. But
Yeah.
what you need to do is follow the bloodlines, which is what I always. I'm preaching to the choir. This is what I always did all the way back from those days in prehistoric. Like, I remember that one animal. I got to track that down, and then follow that bloodline, and then you're getting the exact animal you want. I think there's this misconception about super dwarves that people go, like, especially the crosses. Like, as soon as you drop an ounce of mainland in there, they're totally unpredictable in size. You could buy a super dwarf albino that stays 7 feet, or you could get a super dwarf albino that gets 17 feet. And
Right.
yes, that is true. You can get an animal that is labeled a super dwarf albino and not know if it's going to get 7 feet or 17 feet. But if you're buying an animal from a specific bloodline, you can know very well what it is.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you're like, well, here's this bloodline, a good example would be, chasing down the bloodlines. There is an animal that I sold in 2009, and he was nicknamed the White Diamond. It was a purple snow super dwarf male with some Kalatoa and Jamp locality in him. And this male was just the most spectacular snow I've ever seen. He was crisp, perfect pattern, like single scale wide, perfectly defined, this ivory bone white background. Just
Right.
a gorgeous animal, good size. You know, it's about 8 feet. You know, so decently small size, not the smallest, but an 8-foot retic is about the size of a big, you know, 5-foot female ball python or something.
Right. And the
So
girth.
yeah, right. I mean, yeah, he's about, you know, this big around or whatever. And so I wanted that particular male. And so I've been working with him ever since and perfecting his bloodline into multiple generations. And so you'll see, like, sometimes I have, well, here's a dwarf albino. Someone goes, well, I want a retic. I don't want it to get 16 feet. I like albinos. What's the cheapest thing you got? I'll go toss them a dwarf and super dwarf cross albino. Say, hey, how about 10 to 12 feet? Here's a picture of the parents. This is what this thing's going to look like. That's what that bloodline does. You know,
Right.
but if someone is like, no, I need an animal from the white diamond male, you know what I mean? Now you're getting into a very, very specific bloodline that's been bred, fine-tuned, and perfected over generations. So like I just did a breeding with him where I outcrossed him to a lavender from a Coyote locality. And I know I'm throwing a bunch of like weird names out there and at Chen stuff. If you guys want to jump on Reach Our Reptiles YouTube video, you can look up all this locality stuff. And I don't want to repeat myself, but I have a lot of videos that explain this stuff on there. But I bred him. He's Kalatoa locality. I bred him to a Coyote locality albino. So all new, refreshed genetic diversity. You know, so that I'm not line breeding or anything.
Right.
And moving that out there, it's adding. If you caught it earlier, my Coyotes I breed for a lot of red coloration.
Yeah.
So it's infusing into these albinos a really orangey red. I mean, some of this stuff you would think they were sunfire albinos. They're so colorful, and these are just hatchlings. I mean, one of the great things about retics, one of the things I like, anyways, is that they start out good and they get better as they
Oh my
grow.
gosh. Yeah.
So yeah, the ball pythons kind of fade over time, most morphs.
Yeah.
Where if you have like a carpet python, you might have a really spectacular animal, but it looks like poo as a baby. You know what I mean? You have a hard
Right.
time selling it until it's 2 years old. Retics, they come out, they look hot, and then it's like every shed, it gets more and more exciting.
It does. Yeah. They build and build and build. They get so prettier. Their patterns get more defined as they kind of grow too. And their patterns are so intricate how they are, you know, it's like, I love it. It's so,
But you know, as they increase in size, it's almost like you're turning down tighter on a microscope. Like
it is.
those animals that you just got from me, Adam. I mean, those things are as big around as my pinky. They have a lot going on, but you got to be this close to be able to see it.
Yeah.
So, you know, once they get 4 or 5 feet or whatever, 2 years from now, then you'll be able to be like, hey, this is a cool looking snake. So
it is. Yeah.
it's funny. It never ends. They just, I mean, even my old ones, I mean, if you guys haven't seen a 20-year-old retic, you're missing out. They look awesome.
Yeah.
Most people don't keep them that long, unfortunately. You know, they get them, they get too big, they sell them off.
Yeah.
You know, so all the more reason for the super dwarf stuff to stick around, you know. So
I completely agree. It's manageable through its entire life cycle, right? And you know, and that is like what you were saying earlier when we're trying to breed to perfect the animal. I mean, there's nothing wrong with keeping big snakes. Heck, once I have the space available, I want a big snake myself. But a lot of people buy them and don't fully realize that they're going to get that big, right? And so if we can sell them something that even at its full size is still like manageable, you could go get commercial size, you know, setups for the super dwarf size snake, right? Without worrying too much, right? Whereas like a mainland, I mean, you're going to either have to build something on your own or pay a lot of money to have something made out of plastic to fit that animal once it's 20 plus years, you know?
Well, I think what happens is people's definitions of them change. You know, if you went on any social media platform right now and said, "Hey guys, what's a good cage size for an average adult mainland retic?" Let's say 16 feet, right? A 16-foot. Maybe that's not average, but let's say a good size female. You know, a nice 16-foot retic. What's an acceptable cage size? You're going to hear answers like 8 by 3 foot, you know, by 18-inch tall cage or something. And then if you ask that same person, how does a retic differ from a ball python, other than the obvious size difference, people are going to say things like, you know, highly curious, very attentive to their environment, interested in what goes on outside the cage, very, very active, lean bodied and strong. They should be. They're semi-arboreal. You're
Yeah.
going to hear all these kinds of things. And they're going to say that a retic is much more active than, say, are we still good? I got a weird camera thing popping up.
Yeah, you're good.
No, yeah, we're good.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can see.
So they're going to say that a retic is much more active than a ball python. I think we'd all agree with that. So, but there's something that's lost when it comes to housing a big snake. Everyone automatically goes to what is the minimum to keep it alive. So think about this: if you have a ball python in your standard CB70, which is what, a 41 quart tub or whatever,
I think it's roughly
your ball python is getting 4 feet long, right? And
Yeah.
and that tub is something close to 3 feet long. So you're at about 75% of its length, right? And a lot of people will, especially the newer kind of millennial generation is coming up saying, maybe that's not enough. You know what I mean? Maybe we need to reconsider even that. But let's just say that your standard of living for a ball python is a cage that is 75% of its length. Well, if you apply that same theory to a 16-foot retic, you're talking about you should have a 12-foot cage. And that's only if you want to keep it like a ball python. But you just said that they're much more active than a ball python. So you should probably be giving it something like 1.5 times its length. So now you're talking about a 24-foot enclosure. Who does that? Who does that? They don't. And what they do is most people are very timid about retics to buy their first one. They realize it's a big deal. They're a little bit scared. They're researching a lot. And then somebody kind of opens their eyes to it, hands them a baby one at a show, and it's a beautiful albino golden child, and it's only $400. It's marked down from $500, and it's the deal of a century, and they have that connection with it. They take it home. Yeah. All of a sudden, they're not too scared of it, and before that animal even reaches 10 feet long, they have 10 of them.
Yeah,
because they're not intimidated anymore. They went and bought a bunch of them. Now, everyone talks about, I will only provide the best of situations for my animals, but show me your 20-foot shipping containers that you've converted into snake cages for each one of those. I mean, where are they?
Yeah,
where are they?
They're absent. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a disconnect that happens. Now, if you take a Super Dwarf, for example, let's say you're going on the extreme small end where they're 6 to 7 feet long. It's very easy to find a 6 by 3 foot cage, maybe 2 foot tall, so they have some height. You can put some perches. I have shelves, like basking shelves, in all of my cages. They use them extensively, and that's what also helps keep them healthy. And I mean, I think you can go on Animal Plastics, and for $399 buy a 6 by 3 foot by 18 inch tall cage, and now you have a cage that the snake can actually completely stretch out in and climb up and down and get a good amount of activity. So if you do that and you handle them on a regular basis, which retics love, I mean, some of them are still intimidated by humans, but if you're going with a good breeder from a good bloodline with an acclimated animal, that animal wants to interact with you like most snakes don't. I mean, I think lizard guys get it. If you're keeping like Cyclura, the big iguanas or monitor lizards, that kind of stuff, bearded dragons, you see the interactivity with the keepers. Turtle and tortoise guys, they get it. They know how the turtles and tortoises recognize daily routines and interact with the owners, but you don't get it to that level with snakes very often. But reticulated pythons are able to deliver that personal connection with your pet that that's really what sets them apart from me. People love to say, everyone argues about intelligence. If you go online again and say retics are the most intelligent, everyone will say, no, scrub pythons, oh, you haven't had with a king cobra. But show me a scrub python or a king cobra that you can have like an intimate relationship with, you know what I mean, where you have you can actually hang out with them and take them outside and enjoy them. I mean, it would be very difficult to achieve with with those species, but you can have it,
especially a king cobra.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, people do.
I know. Yeah, I've seen some videos, but dang, man.
Yeah, but I mean, with the Super Dwarfs, you're able to give them the whole life cycle from birth to breeding. You know what I mean? And you can have a small group of, say, 1.4 of them or something, male and 4 females, and breed them and everything, and keep them in a closet. Just take your spare bedroom's closet and make it a reptile room
Yep.
and go to town. You know what I mean? You don't have to go overboard. And at the end of the day, giving our animals a better quality of life, I think, is what brings us a better quality of life. You know,
Yes.
it's not he who with the most reptiles when he dies wins. No, that guy's just a freak hoarder that's going to end up on the news someday. You know what I'm saying? That's not it. I would rather have one animal in a walk-in jungle enclosure that really was living well than to have the same size wall filled with all kinds of cages that I have to go through and clean all the time because every time they poop, it's a national emergency. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true
Like,
too. There's some maintenance to go with these animals. That's
yeah,
for
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so we've had some awesome questions come in while we've been chatting here.
I'm actually sort of watching them there. Yeah, you guys have some really good questions on it. A lot of
Yeah,
this stuff, let me just I'll answer these. You guys pick
sure.
out which ones you want me to go. But I will say, if you guys want to get into more of like the strategy of selective breeding or like market wise, like I want to get started, where do I start? There's a playlist on my YouTube channel called Reptile Industry Insights. Jump on there. There's like 30 videos that's all for you. How to get started, you know, how to do this stuff, you know, how to selectively breed, how to sell sometime. What's up, Chris? You know, and all that kind of stuff. So, but anyways, yeah, what do you guys want to know?
Well, no. So, yeah, thank you for recapping that because I was going to say your channel is full of information. And really, if anybody's halfway serious about keeping Super Dwarf Retics or even just, I mean, learning about kind of the reptile industry in general, check out Garrett's channel. He has tons of information on there. But Jason from Morphic Mixology asked, I thought a really good question. Like, what's the defining line between a dwarf and a super dwarf? Is it purely locality or are, you know, is
yeah,
there a different, you know?
that's a
Yeah.
good question.
That's a great question. I wish that it worked like poodles or something where you're like, standard poodle is this height, you know, miniature poodle is from this to this many inches at the shoulder, toy poodle is down here. It
Right.
does
Right.
not work like that. What it is certain localities were considered. So there is a subspecies, a separate subspecies called, you know, reticulated pythons or Malaya python reticulatus. The
Mm-hmm.
nominate species or mainlands, which is kind of a silly term because there's like 17,000 islands they come from. But anyway, the big guys, the nominate species is Reticulatus reticulatus. The dwarf retic, which currently encompasses dwarf and super dwarf, is Malaya python reticulatus jampeianus. And there's also another species called Saputrii, which includes the southern part of Sulawesi and the island of Slayer and quite possibly another island called Tombolongan. But anyway, those separate subspecies are what we call a dwarf retic. So there's actually the dwarf reticulated python is a scientific thing. It's not necessarily a marketing term in that way. When you start to say dwarf albino, it becomes a marketing thing. But super dwarf is definitely marketing from day one. You know, they could be their own separate subspecies. I mean, the islands are pretty distinct, but basically, what happens is that if you're talking about strictly localities, what makes a dwarf retic is that it came from Slayer Island, which is Sel Liar is the proper. It's like Sel Liar Sel. You
No
know what I mean?
liar.
Liar, yeah. Sel Liar is the Indonesian way to say that. But Selayar Island or Jampea Island are the dwarf retics. Okay, and then the traditional super dwarf retics. There's three really tiny islands. These are all from an island chain that's south of Sulawesi. It's part of Sulawesi province, but in the South Sulawesi, like Flores Sea. And the three little islands that produce the super dwarves are Karampa, Kalatoa, and Madu.
Okay.
So those are super dwarves. Now there's two other localities that we do see here in the United States. One is a Kayawadi and one is a Tombolongan. And the Tombolongan is Saputrii complex, and then the Kayawadi is most likely Jampeianus complex.
Okay.
And those are kind of in between. I don't know whether you call those dwarf or super dwarf or whatever. From a marketing perspective, I kind of hate all that anyways. I'd rather just go with the bloodline and the locality and say, hey,
Yeah.
this is a such and such. Like I said, I bred the white diamond male, which was a Kalatoa Jamp cross, and I bred him to a Kayawadi female, we're keeping them small, reliable, predictable sizes and everything. Whether you call them super dwarf or dwarf, I
It
mean, I
doesn't
don't know.
matter. Yeah.
But so the next step, and everybody that's watching should educate themselves if they're going to buy from really anybody other than me. If you start mixing them, there's an unspoken industry rule that in order to call something a dwarf, it must be 50% or higher bloodline. So in other words, like I mix a pure dwarf to a mainland, that's a 50% dwarf animal. I could call that a dwarf, and that would be from Slayer or Jampea Islands. Maybe these fringe islands too of Tombalongan and Kayawati.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to call it a super dwarf, it has to be 50% or higher of any combination of Kalatoa, Kayawati, Kalatoa, Karompa, or Madu. So if I have an animal that is 25% Kalatoa and 25% Jampea, it adds up to 50% total super dwarf and dwarf. I have to call that animal a dwarf, not a super dwarf, because it would have to have 50% or higher super dwarf. It's really funny. I was trying to help a guy understand this at one of the Tinley shows, and I had what was labeled as a dwarf golden child on my table, and it was 25% Kalatoa, 25% Jampea. And he said, well, how big is it going to get? I said, well, here's a picture of the mom. She's about 11 feet. You know what I mean? Which 11 foot on a retic is probably comparable to like, a 9-foot boa, 8 or 9 foot, BCI or something like that. Because they're a long, slender snake. So they're always longer than they seem. And I was showing him all this kind of stuff and going through it, and he just got kind of hung up on the dwarf label. He didn't want a dwarf. He wanted something small. So he went to another table where they had something marked as a super dwarf golden child, and he bought it. And lo and behold, it was half the price of the dwarf one that I was selling. So he just thought, deal of the century, and it's a super dwarf. Check it out. He came over and showed it to me. I said, well, what percentage, what locality, what are the bloodlines? How was this thing made? He didn't know. He went back. He came back and he said, well, the dad was a 50% Kalatoa, and it was bred to a mainland female. And I said, well, then this animal is only 25% Kalatoa, and you're getting it all from like the father's side. But in my personal experience, they tend to take a lot more of the size cues from the mom. So that if this thing came from a 16, 18 foot female, I just told you the female that these ones came from, the dwarf female, was 11 feet. You know what I mean? Furthermore, the animal I was going to sell you has 25% Kalatoa in it, the same as yours. It also has an additional amount of dwarf blood in it. So technically a 25% Kalatoa, it's not a super dwarf. It's not even a dwarf. It just has a little bit of it's like me saying that, I mean, can everybody see my complexion here? I'm part Cherokee, Good luck finding which part. It's in there somewhere, but it does not show. You know what I mean? I look like straight up Irish. You know what I'm saying? And the snakes are like that too. They're Heinz 57 of these breeds. And if you're not breeding for specific traits like blue eyes or whatever the case may be, they're not going to be there,
Yeah.
So.
Well, so I hope people listening right now, they're building kind of a checklist, right? If you're interested in getting into this stuff, checklist number 1, watch Garrett's videos. He's got a lot of good information there, right? On the second on the checklist, right, is know who you're buying from and establish bloodlines from them. And
absolutely, yeah.
Right. And then third, I would say, is ask for verification of what the parents are. Because like you're saying, not always bloodline, like just because it's from one bloodline, you need to know what the parents are. They could have a large parent that's from that bloodline that they're still breeding, right? And you want the smallest if you're trying to obtain the smallest, right?
Right.
I don't know. What are some other things to throw on a checklist, Garrett?
Thanks, Chris Sexton. He says buy from Garrett. Thank you. He actually has bought from me, so it's pretty funny. But no, I mean that's basically it. What I would do, don't go just say, hey, what do you got available? Give me some labels and some prices so I can price shop it. You won't get anywhere doing that. I have literally like old school bloodlines since before people really kind of figured out how to selectively breed and everyone was just counting percentages alone. I have
Right.
75% Super Dwarf. That's Kalatoa females that are like 13 feet long. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah.
then I
Yeah.
have 50% Jampea females that are dwarfs. That would be a lower percentage dwarf, and they're like 10 feet long. So it's not about food. Everyone, the big mainland breeders like to tell you keep your snake small by not feeding it. Personally, I just hate that. I mean, it's true to a point, but that's also true with me. If you fed me more, I'd be bigger. If you fed me less, I'd be smaller. But there's really a pretty narrow range where that's actually healthy. You're not going to take a mainland and keep it in a CB70 its whole life in a healthy way. It's just not going to happen. That's kind of like the old school, flesh peddlers out in the carnivals and stuff in the 70s saying, here's your baby American alligator, keep it in a 10-gallon aquarium, it'll never outgrow it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to one of these old guys literally like a couple weeks ago. I was like, how do you say that with a straight conscience? He goes, well, it's true. It'll never outgrow it. It'll die long before then. Ha 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 ha. And I'm just like, wow, I hope the industry has evolved beyond that. You know what I'm saying?
No kidding, man.
Don't take an animal, any animal, people, and say, how can I, manipulate the circumstances I keep this animal so that it's most convenient for me? Don't do it.
Right.
Get an animal that you are prepared to make the moves, the sacrifices, the financially, time-wise, or whatever, and change your life around them. And if you can't do it, no matter how cool the animal is, don't get it. I always like to use the thing, like if someone gave me a free elephant, I would say no. As cute as baby elephants are, and as much as I'd love to have one, I just know that I cannot take care of that animal. Yes, they're cool. No, I don't want one. You know what I mean? Yes, that's a beautiful mainland retic. Where's your shipping container cage? You know what I mean? So it just...
No, I agree. I mean, I love monitors. I've always loved monitors, but I don't own any because, for one, I just don't have the size to create the cage that I want. And two, it's a time requirement that, unfortunately, my job and my current lifestyle doesn't permit. And therefore, I won't put an animal in jeopardy just because I want to look at it for 6 months and watch it wither away. Heck no. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's not enjoyable, and I mean, if you do your research, you might be able to get into some like Odiatra or the Australian dwarf monitors that,
there's
do
some,
good in a little cage or something.
there's some
But
Ackies and some other things, but I've always been...
you want a black dragon?
Yeah, I want a black dragon, right? Or I want a giant water dragon, right? And I just know, okay, I can't do that yet, right? And that's the main takeaway, like you're saying, with
absolutely.
people. Don't let your desires get ahead of yourself,
Yeah, don't make the animals pay because of your lack of self-control. You know what I mean? Figure out what it takes to do it right. And in the end, you'll feel much more rewarded. Like you said, who wants to stare at an animal for 6 months while it dies feeling helpless and guilty? You know what I mean? It would be so much better to go get the proper species that would be the animal that's better for you. Maybe wait a little bit longer and then do that. So, back to the hey, Garrett, what do you have available at what price? It's much better if you can say, Garrett, look, this is my situation. This is what I want. You know what I mean? Do you have a retic that fits that? Because I mean, the cool thing about the dwarfs and super dwarfs is like the biggest animals I work with are about 12, 13 feet. And then the smallest ones I work with are about like 6.5 feet. And they're about the size of like a big gopher snake or something like that. But I can get you a retic that's pretty much anywhere in between that. Now, can I get you an albino piebald that's never going to outgrow 6 feet for $300? No. You know what I mean? And I'll just tell you no. But it is funny. A lot of people say, well, I only keep ball pythons, so I want to step up to retics, so I'll probably stay 7 feet or under. And people don't realize how small these snakes are for their length. So, like, Adam, you have a new male coming from me pretty soon.
Yeah.
And the mother of that male show me a ball python that does this. She laid 15 eggs at 2,650 grams.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. So now if you're saying I want to step up to retics from ball pythons, 2,600 grams is like average size female ball python.
Absolutely.
But now that female is between 7.5 and 8 feet long.
Right.
So you know what I'm saying? So if you're like, oh, I want to step up to a 7-footer, you're like, in most cases, that's a step down. I'll tell you, my 6-foot retics, I mean, corn snakes get 6 feet, and these guys are built like corn snakes. So, you know, most people would say a corn snake is smaller than a ball python, but then for some reason in their head, they go to retic and think it's bigger than a ball python, even though it's built like a corn snake and it might be corn snake length.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
and it, you know, so a 6-foot retic is actually quite a bit smaller than a ball python.
Totally.
So,
Yeah. Girth wise and body size. Yeah, exactly. Right.
yeah, so a retic that's 6 feet long is about, you know, this big around. So,
Right.
you know, you're talking about medium large rat for a
Well,
feeder, you know, something like that.
the female that I picked up from you back in Tinley, I mean, I'm still amazed, right? She's growing in length, good, healthy body shape, but I mean, she's still like the size of a
It,
large
and that was
cigar.
Tinley October, not this.
Tinley,
Yeah, it's in
yeah,
the October. Yeah.
Tinley October, yeah, yeah. This is
Right,
last year technically, right? Tinley
right.
October.
And
I mean,
she was almost a year old when you bought her.
right. So we're at,
Right,
year and a half almost ish, right?
right.
And she's barely about the size of an adult corn snake ish. I
Yeah,
mean, and
yeah,
I'm not starving her, right? It's not like I'm only feeding her once a month. I'm feeding her regular basis about every 7 to 10 days, and it's like large mice, maybe a fat weanling to small rat, type of deal.
yep.
And she's just putting on size like she should, but she's not growing ginormous. Whereas I have friends that have bought mainlands, and within the same time frame that we're talking, you're like 4 times the girth size, and
Yeah,
easily a couple
right.
feet longer.
And they're crying because they're like, the guy told me if I don't feed it, it won't grow, and it's so big now. And
Right.
it was labeled a dwarf, and
That's
yeah,
the same thing with that's the fish and aquarium mindset.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
so here she is.
I
So I wasn't
oh
going to
yeah,
pull her
perfect.
out because
There
she
you
she
go.
is going in the shed right now, but
But yeah, I
I
mean, you
mean,
can see she has good, healthy body weight. You know, she's obviously got a
healthy
bunch of
body
poop
weight.
there in the back end, so she's digesting and
Yep,
moving on. And I think the way that you said you feed them is a good thing too. Like sometimes a mouse, sometimes small rat. Give them a
yep.
big meal, give them a small meal, vary it a little bit. You know, I like varied diets with them too. You know, a lot of people are timid about that stuff, but they think like, oh, if I feed it to chicken or something, it's only going to want chicken forever. But retics are not like that. I mean, I
We
have
had that,
retics. They'll eat a wooden spoon if you gave it to them. You know.
Right.
right.
They just like
We
food.
actually had that question pop up. Somebody asked about quail, and I shoot, I should have jotted down the question, but basically it was in essence of like, do you recommend feeding a more varied diet? And that's kind of what you were talking about. I know your videos
Yeah,
have talked about it. Yeah.
I like it. Quail are actually a really good source of food for them. They're really lean meat, and you know that they're going to have like all that keratin from the feathers and just different macro and micros that the other meals won't have. And one great thing about birds in particular is you can get what's called chicken lay mash, which is something you feed your hens when they're laying eggs, and it's basically packed with calcium. And so
Oh,
if you go
really?
get live quail or like run down to Tractor Supply this time of year and get a bunch of chicks, keep them on chick mash for 48 hours and then feed them to your snakes. It's like this little calcium rich packed
It's
food.
like
So
gut
I love
loading.
gut loading. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do the gut loading and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that stuff is great. There's definitely some other you know things about super dwarves that you definitely want to factor in if you want to talk about like the cons of getting into super dwarves.
Yeah.
And I don't really see them as a con, but you know, someone was asking, let's see, Rich was saying, you know, how old is the breeding age for like a pure super dwarf? And that's a great question. The males will breed around the same age as a mainland male. I know of super dwarf like crosses breeding as young as 7 months, which is a little bit insane. But you know, from like a practicality standpoint, if you plan on your males being about 2 years old, they'll be ready to breed. Um, Females take longer to mature than the mainlands do. So you might be at like most mainlands, it's like you'll get them to go at 3. You might get them to go in the 2 year, you know, 2 and a little over. I know of a female that laid at 18 months That's
Wow.
not happening with super dwarfs. Super dwarfs, females, pures. It's like 4 years old. I might, if they start cycling them, I might breed them, but they usually don't. And then I'll start trying to breed them around 5 years old. And
Wow.
that's part of the reason for the rarity of the pure locality stuff, is that they take longer to mature. So, 5 years is longer than most reptile breeders' attention span. It just is.
Right.
They'll buy them and they'll
Yeah.
be on to some other new species by 5 years, and that animal just never gets bred.
Right.
So, unless you really want to follow through, go do that kind of stuff. I did see someone else asked about getting started. Should I grab a bunch of pure locality females, breed
Yeah.
a mainland to it? I mean,
Oh,
that's
on that.
that's a great way to selectively breed for small snakes. But I'll tell you the problem with that strategy. Like right now, if you say, "Hey, Garrett, I want a pure Kalatoa female," I'm going to put you on my waiting list. It's probably about a year long, till I can produce enough Kalatoas to catch up to you. And I can only give you an estimate of what market value is right now, but it keeps going like this. I mean, I told you it when I was at Prehistoric, it was like $300 pure Kalatoa female. Right now, a female is more in the neighborhood of like $1,500, maybe $2,000.
Right.
And by the time I get you one, it might be $2,500.
And that's
You
not
know,
morph. That's just a straight up
no, pure, no,
regular.
but
Yeah.
actually, a morph is usually cheaper. If I give you a tiger, 50% tiger Kalatoa that's already done, then
Hmm.
that's going to be a lot cheaper. It's probably like $600 for a female.
Right.
So don't go buy a $2,500 snake that you have to wait a year to get and then grow up for 5 years to breed it to a tiger male. That would be ridiculous. Just
Right.
buy the thing that is close to your end goal. Why would you spend all the time and money endlessly catching up to stuff that other people have already done? So in other words, if it already exists, buy that animal and work from there.
Right.
Don't go say, "Oh, I want to make super dwarf albinos, so I'm going to have this giant mainland albino that eats me out of house and home and spend 10 years making hets, growing them up, breeding them together to get a 1 in 4 chance when I put them together, make a super dwarf albino that exists today, and you can have one for, give or take $1,000, for a
Right.
real nice purple super dwarf that's going to stay under 10 feet. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe
Right.
smaller on males."
And the thing
So
too is that what I feel like we were kind of saying is because we're breeding for size, after you breed to that mainland, you really can't breed that mainland female again. You want to move on now to reduce size
yeah,
again, increase your
you're right.
percentage.
Right,
So I mean,
exactly. So you're
that,
you're creating disposable animals. Whereas
right,
if you just bought a handful of so depending on what morph it is, if it's a morph that's already established, get into it. If it's a new morph getting in, to be honest with you, most of the time it makes the most sense to wait till someone else makes one.
right,
The only exception would be if you have like this undying passion for a low dollar value morph. Then you might have to make it yourself, because I don't think anyone else is gonna. So something like a genetic stripe, for example. All kinds of people think they buy dwarfs and they get genetic stripes, but genetic stripes are most likely, at least we don't have the locality data on them, but more than likely they are not from that dwarf retic complex. They're not from Jampea. They're not from Slayer. They're not from any of those places. And so people buy these dwarf genetic stripe animals or whatever. So, anyways, I love genetic stripe. It would be cool to see it in a dwarf. I'm probably not going to invest 10 years and, all the caging to grow up the hets and stuff to go make a super dwarf genetic stripe that, I would have to probably sell for $10,000 or $20,000 to make up for the 10 years of work to make it. And
right.
everyone would be like, "What the hell? Genetic stripes kind of small anyway. I could just not feed it, and it's only cost $200." You know, so you know what I'm saying. Now, if I go make a super dwarf hypo or a super dwarf pied or some of those new,
The
those
rainbow,
are cutting edge morphs in retics.
the rain,
Mochinos. People
Yeah.
will pay for those, and I'm not trying to gouge people or whatever, but at the same time, long time to get them, low reproductive rates compared to other animals. It's definitely a labor of love.
Right.
So it benefits you to have one animal, set up a big beautiful cage, keep it, you know what I mean, just have it
Yeah.
be an awesome experience, and wait a little bit longer and buy the animal you want from the bloodline you want.
There
Then
you go.
if you breed it, great. If not, great. So
That's sound advice right there. You know, so one thing I've been meaning to ask you on, I mean, even I'm like personally interested about this is, I mean, you're such a great source of information about Super Dwarf Retics, but you know, when you're not available or you know, if I don't want to hit you up, are there other sources that we can get good information from, like either other breeders or other places, right? Like
I mean,
maybe.
you can always go to other breeders, but you know, it is hard to find people with good information. People
Hmm.
love to ask me for that kind of stuff. Again, on the YouTube video, I have a playlist called Talk 'em Up Tuesday, and I'm not a like let's you and me compete. We're both super dwarf breeders, right? I'm more like let's bring this community together. There's still so much we have to learn about these animals. Let's work together and be successful. You know, each of us bringing our own unique angle to this game.
Yeah.
And so in doing that, I've actually interviewed a lot of super dwarf breeders that I respect, and they're on there. You can go watch those things. And I ask them a lot of questions about the super dwarves, and different people have different mentalities on you know doing that. It's a lot of it's still kind of like the experimental stage of things. I mean, we're starting to finally see, like I said, after 20 years of breeding, these
Right.
predictably small results. I think we know how to get them now. It's just a matter of people setting the right animals in place, like you're doing, Adam, and just
Yeah.
putting the time in, growing them up, enjoying them while they grow, having that awesome relationship with the animal, and maybe breeding someday. And when enough people do that, you know, we'll start to see. I mean, that's going to be an exciting market.
Yeah.
So,
I
but
agree.
as far as information on it goes, I will say this. One of the things I've been working on in my YouTube absence is I'm going to actually have, they'll be fun. They'll be Reach Out Reptiles kind of branded style care sheets and informational things that you can download right from our website. So our website's getting rebuilt as well. People always want to have the availability. The availability is like whatever's hatching right now because they're always sold. I'm sorry, it's kind of the way that it goes. You know what I mean? It's either that or something that's like the really expensive, you know, the $15,000 to $20,000 animal that
Right.
takes that one person that is the right animal for them at the right time to sell. So if you
Yeah.
want to ask me my availability, it's going to be, you know, I can show you on one hand, and they're all going to be 5-figure snakes, you know. Um, but now that being said, I have a ton of stuff hatching, but I haven't even got to those waiting
Right.
lists. But what I want to do on the website is show the bloodlines and show the breedings. This male, this female. Here's what's coming. These are what's I
Almost like a
expect out of this
registry.
breeding.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Just a breeding plan. What's in the
Yep.
incubator? What's coming up with a little click now if you want notifications about this clutch. And that's the way I run my waiting list. It's not a deposit thing or anything like that. Just give me your information. Tell me what you want. And when something like that hatches out, I'll let you know and you'll get a pic of it. You know, I take individual pictures, I put them up on the website. You pick, I want this one, this one, this one. You know, have you ever told anyone, Adam, how you came across those 4 females that you unboxed the other day? Am I
I
allowed
have.
to tell that story?
That is true. And actually, this is now twice with you that I've kind of fallen into the right place, right time.
Yeah, well, yeah, the other one was a different guy that so that the first female that you bought, I never really wanted to sell her, but one
Right.
guy was like, "Bring her to Tinley, I'll make it worth your while." So I was like, I mean, I'm shameless, you know. She was my snake. She's a holdback. I'm terrible at selling holdbacks. I do it all the time. It's awful, and that's probably why I can't keep up with the waiting lists and stuff because I keep letting all my good stuff go when people are like, "Hey, buddy." But anyway, yeah, I brought that one to the show, and then the guy's like, "Yeah, oh, yeah, she's beautiful," and then he walks away. I'm like, "What the
Yeah.
heck? I brought it
You're
there. Yeah,
you're like, what up?
all right, I'm
And
taking
then
her home."
you and I were in a closet. So we,
That was
you know,
after the show. That was Sunday night. Show was over. Animals were packed to go home, and you
yeah,
came over to my house that I rent,
yeah,
and everybody kind of comes and crashes or whatever. Sunday night after the show, and
yeah.
we threw back a couple of beers. You're like, I still want to learn more about super doors. You were swarmed at the show. I said, well, let's go talk, and they were in a closet, so we sat down in this like walk-in closet. And we're
Yeah.
taking super dwarves out. They're all over us. I think we're holding like 30 snakes at once, drinking beers in a closet, talking about
Yeah.
it. You end up going home with that one. So no, the
Exactly.
4 I was talking about is our collective friend Miguel.
Yeah.
on a waiting list for a long time to get these animals.
Yeah.
And
2 years, right? I think. Yeah.
yeah, he's been bugging me about them for like 2 years. So I finally got those animals only have 12.5% mainland left in them. So, but they still have a chance at being het snow, which is anery and albino. So they're, from a bloodline perspective, even though they look normal, they're super advanced. They're as small as it gets with a possibility of 2 recessive genes in there. Awesome animals. There's only 2 females in the United States that are capable of producing that, and they don't always breed every year. But anyways, I get this clutch of them, and he was a ways down the list, and I had sold a female. I'm going like, okay, which one do you want? The guy says it. I pull it from the website. Go to the next guy. Which one do you want? Well, I see our buddy Miguel Garcia. Hi, Miguel, if you're watching. And Miguel, I love Miguel. Miguel does not love me the way a man should love a man, and it just never seems to connect. And so I'm going to just go ahead and shout him out right now. I love you, Miguel. He went on there and he said, how many females do you have left? I want to get in the Super Dwarf game in a big way. I've been talking about it for years, and now's the time. I said, well, I think I have 4 females that are still left, because I saw him at the show and it was also his turn on the list. So I'm thinking, pick your female. He goes, well, I want all of them that are left. And I said, are you sure? Are you sure you're sure? Because you're going to break a lot of hearts, because they got like 20 people in line behind you on these females, that have been on this waiting list to get these animals. And I'm very strict about my waiting list. It's kind of like, these animals are these animals. And you go, no, I want them. When I got home, I found out I didn't quite have as many females even as I had promised him, because some of them I wanted to hold back for myself. And so I said, I'll pull for my holdbacks to get you your 4. And it was always like, the check's in the mail tomorrow. I'm going to get it to you. Just hold on. I'm busy. Let me do this. And like I said, Miguel, man, not showing me any love. So we had him there. And then, me and you were talking to Adam, and Adam's like, I'll front him for Miguel, send him to my house. So
exactly.
At that point, I kind of like written it off, because I can't like call everybody up. I mean, I'm sure they would have been happy to say, hey, I got a female available now or whatever. But at that point, I was like, you know what? Screw it. I've been looking at these animals. They're awesome. I'm just going to keep them.
Man, and they are awesome. All 4 of them. Holy cow, man. And
so you came and bought his,
that's nice.
Bought his animals for him, had them shipped to yourself, you sly dog. So, yeah, good story. Everyone's going to hate me now, because they're like, that should have been my female. I'm sorry. Don't hate me. Go talk to Miguel. Hold on, let me get you guys his cell phone number real quick. You can here's his address. Talk to Miguel.
Exactly. I hit him up. I was like, hey, man, I got your 4 snakes.
Jeez. Has he seen them yet?
No. He's been too busy for me too. So, that's how it goes.
Right. Busy guy. That's okay. I'm a busy guy. I miss out on a lot of stuff that way too. Yeah.
So we really try not to go over like, an hour 15. We've reached that. These conversations that we're having, I mean, they're always so good, right? So I definitely want to give chat an opportunity, ask some questions. We've had a couple come in that we haven't addressed directly. There are a few that I'll probably won't ask. And the only reason is because I really do want you guys to go to Garrett's channel. If you are serious about Super Dwarf Retics, this is not a plug. It's not a hype to get you, get Garrett viewer count. He really does have the information.
I don't do like the vlog thing or anything. It's all just informational videos about Super Dwarfs. That's the whole channel. It's 100 videos about Super Dwarfs. So if you can't find it in there, shoot me a message or something. I'll make a video to answer questions. But let's do the chat. Let's see. I've been kind of watching it. It's you guys have a pretty hot chat going on. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, the chat always gets lively with each other. It's a good group of people, you know what I mean? Nobody gets too crazy in there. So
I feel like we have a pretty respectful, intelligent chat. So it's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Respectful
So,
intelligence. That's exactly what I was thinking.
well, it's on my channel. We can't get me demonetized because I'm not monetized yet. So,
Oh,
We lost the
you
last
poor guy. You're not getting your $30 a month paycheck, man. Or is that just me? Yeah.
so a lot of people have piped up in chat, and I know I've gotten hit up in different social medias of, the legalities around super dwarfs, right? And basically, in some states, you can't keep reticulated pythons. Super dwarfs get lumped into that. I always
Yes.
respond back with, support your U.S. ARC. But what are some of the things that you may be able to provide these people to help with that, right? Like, so is there
Well, the
something?
big ones are New York and Florida. You can't have retics. Super dwarves are reticulated pythons, so the rules banning reticulated pythons will ban super dwarves as well. They usually get wrapped up into that. Now, Florida, you can get a permit if as a breeder or as an educator. So if you're doing shows and stuff, but you don't come trying to buy snakes saying, yeah, I'm going to get that permit, or I'll drive up and pick them up from you. Don't worry about it. You're not getting one of my snakes, yeah, under illegal circumstances. I want to make sure all of my stuff gets well cared for. So go get those permits, do that stuff, put in the time. There's a lot of local provinces and state laws and things that have like funny laws, but if it's not an all-out ban with a listing of the species, one of the best things you can do is like you said is support US ARC. But beyond that, you can't just pay somebody else to go fight your battles for you. No one's going to come down to your little, hometown USA and fight your battles for you. Go down to the city council. And I mean, shoot, if all the states can legalize marijuana usage when it's federally banned, you should be able to get super dwarves written off there. Make a loophole, explain that super dwarf reticulated pythons are different from mainlands. They have a scientifically separated subspecies, and if you can get it written in that purebred or crosses of Malaya python, reticulatus jampayanus, or saputrii should be legalized, then you can probably do that. I mean, you would be surprised. So if
Yeah,
you go in there and you're just loud and noisy enough, or if you spend as much time watching the videos and dreaming about super dwarfs as you did writing letters to local representatives. I'm not saying president of the USA who's never going to get your stuff. I'm saying your local reps
local.
and
Yeah,
get them to respond to that stuff, then you'll be okay. If it's on the state level, you need to work through the state to get your permits.
Yeah, yeah. There's always a loophole too. That's for
Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
most places they're still legal to keep though.
Yeah.
Right, in most places. And like look at Kevin from Nerd, for example. He just posted a video on his YouTube recently about him at a local I think it was a city council meeting, or he was fighting a new bill that was coming forth in his local area about snakes and mangrove snakes and things like that. So get active, right? Find out when the meetings are, show up to
Yeah,
them. You know,
most people are totally uneducated about that stuff. So if you come in
exactly.
and you show them pictures of, here's this little super dwarf, what are we so afraid of? This is quite possibly one of the most domesticated species as far as being bred for the most different traits to make them excellent captives, more so than any reptile I know of. And pitch it to them that way. It has the potential anyways. We're on the cusp of it, of being the first truly domesticated reptile. Temperament, size, color, pattern, everything,
Yeah.
is being modified genetically on these animals through selective breeding. So, yeah.
And actually, yeah, Dan said that it was the State House of New Hampshire. So, not to downplay it by me saying it was local, that was actually a pretty big deal. And he was in there fighting, for the rights of everybody there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty good. Some of the other ones that have come through are, kind of locality questions, but your videos cover that so well that I'd really like to point people back again to.
If you want to know about the actual locality stuff, there's one called "There Are No Super Dwarf Morphs," and I think the thumbnail says it's a lie, And if you go on there, I show the island chains, I discuss the localities. I want to start doing videos, and some of them are even shot, but I need to get them up that highlight, and show you different examples of the different localities. The problem is some of these things are so rare that it's difficult to do. I started with the rarest, which was Carrampas. There's 5 that I know of in the United States. Well, there's technically 7, but 2 of them don't count, but long story. But anyways, so, highlighting those is really difficult. But yeah, I go through a lot of that stuff. I mean, some of these animals are pretty rare, but I'm doing what I can. There's entire races that come from islands that are like the size of New York Central Park.
So crazy.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and they can't be imported to the U.S. anymore at all. So what's here is here, and so us being able to breed those for future generations to have, I think is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's pretty special. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Do you
get them, Jason?
A random question is they're talking about just shipping your snakes. Do you ship anything outside of the USA, or is that like a prohibited thing to do?
No, you can actually export them. You cannot import them anymore.
Okay.
So I'm pretty careful with what I do. Currently, I can't keep up with the US market, so it doesn't make a lot of business sense to even try to export because of the additional cost. Most people that ask for exports have never imported an animal to their country. Generally, the cost is about $1,500 just for the shipping and the permits and everything. Now, if I was going to the ham show and bringing a whole ton of reptiles or whatever, you probably won't pay anything, but it's because I'm bringing 75 or 100 animals. Super Dwarfs aren't like that. I don't have those kinds of numbers to play with to make that make sense. That being said, I'm going to try to open it up internationally. I've got something in the works with KB Reptiles up in Canada.
Oh, cool.
So, because the Canadian market historically has had a really awesome super dwarf opportunity for super dwarfs, but they were so misrepresented, and the waters were all muddied up. There's not a lot of good stuff up there. But I'd love to see that market get going again, just because it's contributed a lot to my collection. I have a lot of animals that came from Canadian origins back in the day when we were importing the stuff. So anyways, stay tuned for that with KB Reptiles.
Yeah, KB.
We're gonna use that. They're gonna bring over basically a large shipment from me and then distribute from there, so that it'll split the cost between the customers, so that you're probably paying the same amount a US customer would to get your animals when everything is said and done. So that should be pretty exciting. And then once they're in Canada, they're a little bit easier to get into Europe as well. But yeah, you would have to do that. If somebody wanted me to ship to an exporter, I would. So if you're like, hey, I've got this American exporter over here, ship your animals to him, he'll take care of it, that's fine. But you're going to have to do the legwork on that. I don't have the time for that, unfortunately, right now. Hopefully in the future.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, great question there. Rich McCall had a cool question earlier, kind of shifting gears. I know we're bouncing around a little, but I'm just going to read it word for word. So he says his Kalatoa is a 2014 girl from Travis Coobs. Her feeding response is huge. I've been leery of breeding because I don't want to put in my male and have him get eaten. Is that a legitimate concern? All right. So yeah, are the retics cannibalistic or? No,
they don't eat each other, but they definitely sometimes will bite first and ask questions later if it's a food response thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of that has to do with the way that you've trained your animal, with the way that you feed it. But Rich, I would say if your female is like slamming everything that comes as soon as it comes into the cage, probably a good way to do that is remove the female, throw the male in the cage so that he's exploring an unknown territory, and then reintroduce the female. You can also breed them outside of the cage. You can throw them both in a tub or something like that. But basically, the thing you want to do is break the food response, where they're hunting before you introduce that male. So like I do that with hook training. That's something that we start with all of our babies from a young age. I have a lot of human kids that handle the animals. And so they usually come in pretty friendly and at least have the startings of being hook trained, where you're petting them with something else before you pick them up. And so they learn to kind of question things before they go grab at stuff. But that's actually one of my favorite traits about the retics is the strong feed response. I remember someone asking how to eliminate that. I'm like, why on earth would you want to do that? I mean, all you ball python people's got to get me. I mean, wouldn't you love it if your ball python ate anything without asking you any questions?
100%. My favorite thing ever.
It's whatever. I'll eat it. I don't care what it is. Put it
Yeah,
over here.
if my ball python comes out looking like a heat seeker missile, I'm stoked because I know it's going to eat, right? Every time I open that retic's
your
cage,
retic.
she's like,
Yeah, what do we do?
I'm like,
Where's it
all
at?
right,
Where's
is
it
it
at?
feed time? Like,
Right. And you just go through a routine to show her she's not going to eat. They'll learn the routine and they'll be okay.
Yeah, I stroked the back of her neck a little bit with the hook, and then towards the back of the body, and then literally just you're saying just that routine that we have every time I do that, and then she knows it's not feeding. She'll lower. I can just reach right in and grab her, and no concern. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if you've kind of created a monster and trained them to be insane when it comes to eating, Rich, what I would probably do is pull them out, put them on the floor, introduce them to each other there. You know what I mean? Let them kind of smell each other, see what's going on. Immediately, they're going to be thinking about something other than food. And then you can put them back in the cage. At that point, they should be fine. So.
Yeah, that was a good question. I like that a lot. Because retics, they have a hit to them. You know, it's not a ball python.
Yeah. No, they come out looking for food. That's for sure. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love and I feel like for my retics too is I have they're really good at knowing feeding time too. Like, you know, I always feed at night. And so anytime I come in there and as soon as I hit a handle on one of the cages, heads are up, right? Like we're ready. Like where's the rat at? What are you even doing? What are you waiting for? You know,
right.
I love that.
I do the same thing. I try to do it always at like I'll set the rodents out to thaw in the morning or whatever, and then I go through to feed at night. And before I do, I go, just tap on all the cages throughout the room, wake everybody up. Hey guys, feeding time. I don't do that any other time. So that way they're anticipating it, they're on it, they know it's time to eat. But they sit in those little cages and study you. You know what I mean? They learn your idiosyncrasies because they're trying to predict. It's like having a spider sense. It borders on preemptive, information or whatever. They want to develop that, so they learn everything that you can. So
yeah, and that's kind of a cool feature too. Because I will say that I have a second gen captive male, mainland, and he was not the most friendly animal there for a while. And when I moved him to a enclosure where he was high and he could see everything, he's mellowed out quite a bit. I feel like just being able to see me walking in and out, moving around, doing everything I'm doing.
You remember I said I put shelves in all of my cages, even having extra vertical height on any cage. What you're doing is you're keeping them in a probably still a fairly short cage.
It's not tall.
You're creating artificial elevation for him by putting it at the top. Exactly. But if you give every snake that elevation, they all do that. Give them some elevation, some perches, some climbing shelves, let them be semi-arboreal like they are. And they definitely relax a lot. So.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing though, just a testament to, I guess, the psyche of the animal,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Rich said, he was training her and did all that. And then about 3 years, just a flip switched and she went through the roof. Yeah, every snake's different.
When she turned 3 years old?
That's what Rich just said in chat. Yeah.
Oh, well, she's probably trying to. So when I breed Super Dwarf Retics, I cycle them on food. Kind of one theory and something that I sort of follow. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it seems to work with my captive animals. There's not really permanent food sources on some of these islands. And so one of the theories is that they actually only eat seasonally, like migratory birds. They come in and nest. So one thing that's amazing about super dwarfs, as small as they are, they're able to process enormous meals and put them down with no problem. And the thinking is they eat 3 or 4 gigantic meals and then get all the calories they need. So, if she's 3, that's usually like kind of breeding behavior. And then a lot of times they come out of that seasonally. But yeah, a female that's trying to put weight on so that she can think about laying eggs becomes ravenous, absolutely ravenous.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting. Well, Garrett, man, this discussion's been awesome. We're coming up on the 90-minute mark. So, I want to be respectful of everybody's time, your time. And so anything you want to leave us with before we can get wrapping up and jump into the fire round questions, because we got to do those.
Oh, yeah, the lightning round.
Oh, you guys do a lightning round too? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you steal that from me, or did you come by it naturally?
It's been a
I
high.
don't know who I definitely stole it from someone else too. So I don't know. But no, I would just say if you're interested in learning more about super dwarves, start on Reach Out Reptiles YouTube channel and go ahead and subscribe, because I haven't put a video up in like a month, but it's because I'm actually moving. You guys probably see this giant mess behind me. Here, I'll give you the behind the scenes quickie tour here.
Yeah.
Here's
Behind the
a
scenes
sneak
at
peek.
Reach Out.
Yeah, I gotta walk through all the junk, but this is actually going to be my new office. I'm going wall to wall super dwarfs in the snake room that everybody knows and loves. So there's my high tech incubator there. We got the adults here, babies here. I've got a bunch more racks coming to fill these kind of gaps with all the junk and everything. But anyway, stay tuned on the channel. I'm going to put a lot of like I said, the locality spotlight videos up. I'm gonna do some morph spotlight and market spotlight videos. A lot of good informational stuff will be coming up. And then just check back. I'll announce it in those videos. That's probably a good place to start. But check back with the website, and there will be finally some written, downloadable information that you guys can get. It'll be like fully illustrated and everything like that. So they should be pretty legit. Good source of information on these animals, because it's just sorely lacking out there today. But again, I've already got 100 videos on the YouTube channel, so start there and move with that stuff. Yeah,
You can burn some hours with that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, sweet, man. Garrett, thank you so much. And all right, Joel, I'll turn it over to you.
Lightning round?
Yeah, let's do
Guys,
it.
I understand how lightning round works.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know how yours works, but this will be
Well,
interesting.
we have 5 questions. They're super in depth. No, they're not. They're not at all.
Okay.
No, they're very dumb.
Okay.
But so
I'm good at those.
Well, yeah, me too. That's why I wrote it. So favorite color.
What's my favorite? Okay, I'm gonna catch flack for this one. My favorite color is October.
Okay, that's
Second favorite would be gray.
Right. I that was probably one of the coolest answers though, October, because I envisioned what October is. I like that. Yeah,
my favorite color.
Yeah, I like that a lot actually. So we haven't talked a lot about genes tonight. We've talked a lot about lineage and localities and stuff like that. But if we were to talk about genes, do you have a button fly or a zipper fly on your gene?
I go with the Walmart jeans, so they're usually zipper fly. But I found this guy that apparently is a photographer for like men's fashion stuff.
Yeah.
So he leaves all these free clothes outside of his studio all the time, and they're always my size. So apparently I'm the perfect male model size.
Right.
And more often than not, those are button fly. So
yeah,
I do have quite a few button fly jeans. Yeah, they make me feel pretty sexy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. It kind of sucks getting your crotch stuck on stuff. I mean, I do a lot of like DIY working around stuff, or climb under a car and then get your crotch hooked up on the undercarriage of the car. And
being pretty it's not easy being pretty, you have to.
It's not. I do feel sexy even when I'm attached to the bottoms of the cars by my crotch. Yeah.
So Garrett's a button guy only because he got free jeans. So.
That's it. I mean, everyone talks. They always say they love my style, but they don't realize this. I pulled these off the neighbor's barn that fell down. Like, here's some trash I can use. No joke. Today I worked all day cutting up a piece of metal from inside of a piano that I found that burned, and I was like, "This will make a cool table leg." So yeah,
that's awesome, man. Heck yeah.
That's it. Yeah, those are my button fly jeans. That's where it all comes from.
Okay. I like that. I like that a lot.
Good question.
Okay. Pulling her back. Childhood movie. Favorite childhood movie.
Favorite childhood. Is it okay if I pick a childhood movie from when I was a little older than a child? Does that count?
You can just feel your heart on that.
Okay. Iron Giant. I like Iron Giant.
Yeah.
Good movie. If you guys haven't seen that one. Every boy, even those of us who are just young at heart and actually kind of old now, wants their own giant friendly robot to shoot their enemies.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so favorite thing to eat.
Some people know this about me, maybe not everybody, but I'm actually vegan.
Okay.
So, gosh, my favorite thing to eat. I mean, I like to eat. So, shoot, I don't know.
Black bean burger.
Black bean burger is a good one. Yeah, I like that. Oh, okay. I've got one. There's food called seitan, Seitan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had it, but there's a barbecue joint near us that does like ribs and wings and everything like that. And they have this seitan. So it's like a vegan boneless wings. It's made out of seitan. And that stuff is legit. It's awesome. But other than that, honestly, it's like I love going out in the woods in the summer and eating blueberries and blackberries. I mean, you cannot beat that. Like sun ripened berries out in the wild.
Ooh, yeah.
That's
They're
freaking awesome.
ripe when they're ripe, not picked. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so final question. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Knowing everybody's name.
Okay, yeah. I like
automatically, maybe like their name and like one interesting fact about them. That way, from a sales perspective, it'd be great. I would remember everybody. I would always know their name. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I know I'm supposed to know you, but I forget, which happens to me a lot. But the other way, I just think it would be so cool to be like, Karen, and then that one fact, like 3rd grade, Mrs. Anderson, remember? And she'd be like, I would just do that several times a day as a pick me up.
Groundhog Day, man.
I like it. That was a good lightning round.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
You have no idea the flack I catch for my button jeans, man. Yeah.
Send me out something. I'll help you represent.
Okay, there we go.
I probably wore all mine down. It's time to go to the photographer again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there we go.
I need my State 48 hat and my button fly jeans.
Yeah, I'll get those out to you.
33, 32. You can go with 32, 32 if they're the stretchy kind. I like to wear those.
All right. So, yeah, we're gonna make that happen. We're gonna
give me a care package out here. So, I like good packaging for my super doors. Help me out here, Joel.
All right, dude. I'm gonna make that happen. We're gonna represent that, dude.
There you go. Exactly. Oh man. So Garrett, wrapping up here, best way to reach you, which is what? Instagram, Facebook. Good luck.
No, honestly, I'll just throw my cell phone number out there. It's 412-925-1933. If you don't need to get a hold of me right away, probably Facebook Messenger is the one that's easiest for me to get at and check. But I'm also on Instagram. I've got email. It's Reach Out Reptiles. My email is Garrett at Reach Out Reptiles. So if you can spell my name, you can email me. Yep. Facebook Messenger and probably text messaging would be the best way to get a hold of me.
Cool. There we go. Perfect.
Awesome.
Man, thank you so much again. Tonight's interview has been, I think it's been really, really good, right? We are typically a ball python community around here, so really appreciate you popping in, giving a different perspective on the Super Dwarf Retics. I know we've got a lot of people interested in that. I myself am a Super Dwarf addict, that's for sure. So thank you for helping me with my addiction.
I appreciate you guys bringing on, and to be honest with you, I think probably the vast majority of my customers are ball python guys. They're not retic guys. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely. This has been a pleasure, and it's been fun just hanging out with you guys. So next time I'm out there on the West Coast, I'll have to swing by. We'll have to get together or something.
Yeah, next time.
Beer is vegan too, so we can make that happen. Climb in a closet. And,
those vodka.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, my house is the size of a closet, so if you come over, we're basically over.
It's perfect.
Sounds good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, thank you for your time. Just did want to give a special shout out to the Reptile Report. They've been featuring Joel and I's interviews recently, so wanted to say a special thank you to them.
Yep.
and everything like that. And Joel, turn it over to you, sir, to carry us on out, man.
Yeah. I mean, thank you everybody for showing up. Like Adam was saying, this is a little bit of a departure, but everybody knows Garrett and we all love him. So this was really cool for you to come over here. I feel like I just sat here and zoned out the entire time, just listening to everything you were saying. So it was this was a lot of fun. We're definitely gonna have to do it again. Thank you everybody again. Get a hold of Garrett, buy some snakes, and let's start making a bunch of super dwarfs out there.
Exactly.
Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Awesome.
See you guys.
Good night, everyone.